The city hummed with the energy of a Saturday afternoon, the air thick with the scent of hot pavement and the sweet tang of blooming magnolias in the parks of Austin, Texas. David leaned against the glass railing on the second floor of the mall, his fingers brushing the cool metal edge, his mind adrift. At 34, he was an architect shaping Austin's skyline. His name was etched into the sleek designs of downtown's high-rises. But today, his thoughts weren't on steel beams or glass facades. They lingered on something lost, a faint whisper of a life he might have lived. Below, the mall buzzed with life. Families wove through the crowd, their laughter sharp like citrus, while teens clustered near the food court, their voices a chaotic symphony. David watched without really seeing, until a flash of auburn hair caught his eye. It was the way she moved, confident yet graceful, like she was swaying to a song only she could hear. Sarah. His heart lurched, a bittersweet mix of cinnamon and salt, sharp and warm all at once. She stood at the movie theater entrance, holding the hand of a little girl. The child, about 6, had dark curls tumbling over her shoulders, and her eyes, God, her eyes, were a mirror of his own, hazel with flecks of green, like sunlight filtering through leaves. David's breath caught, his chest tightening as if the air had turned to molasses. The girl tugged at Sarah's sleeve, pointing at a movie poster with a wide grin. Something about her face, the curve of her cheek, the way her nose crinkled, was like seeing a snapshot of himself at that age. He gripped the railing harder, his knuckles whitening. Sarah hadn't noticed him. She laughed, her voice a soft chime cutting through the mall's din, and David felt the floor waver beneath him. 7 years. 7 years since their world had crumbled, since nights when words sliced like knives, and the love that once burned bright had turned to ash. He remembered their last fight, the accusations hurled like stones, the way she'd walked out without looking back. And now here she was, with a child who might be— What? His daughter? The girl, Emma, he heard Sarah call her, turned, and her eyes met his for a fleeting moment. It was like a jolt of electricity, a snap that made the world around him fade. She smiled shyly, and David's heart raced, a drumbeat echoing in his chest. It could be a coincidence, it could just be a resemblance, but the doubt lodged in him like a splinter, and he knew he couldn't just walk away. He descended the escalator, his heart matching the rhythm of his steps. The mall seemed louder now, voices and laughter blending into a cacophony buzzing in his ears. Sarah and Emma were in line at the theater, and he hesitated, his feet heavy as lead. What would he say? "Hey, Sarah, remember me, is she mine?" The thought felt absurd, but the resemblance was undeniable. He had to know. "Sarah." His voice came out rougher than he meant, almost swallowed by the noise around them. She turned, and for a moment, time froze. Her brown eyes, so familiar, widened, her expression shifting from surprise to something more complex, a mix of alarm and longing, like the past had knocked on her door unannounced. Her scent, something floral with a hint of vanilla, reached him, dragging up memories of nights tangled in each other's arms, of whispered promises. "David," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. What are you doing here?" Emma looked up at him, curious, her eyes wide and bright like a baby owl's. David tried to smile, but his face felt stiff, his muscles taut. "I just came to the mall and saw you." He paused, his gaze fixed on the girl. "Who's this?" Sarah hesitated, her hand tightening around Emma's. The girl leaned into her mother, whispering something David couldn't hear. His heart pounded so loudly it seemed to echo in his chest, a beat of fear and hope intertwined. "This is Emma," Sarah said finally, her voice steady but with a tremor he didn't miss. "My daughter." "Your daughter," David echoed, the words heavy on his tongue. He looked at Emma again, searching for clues, anything to confirm or erase the suspicion burning in his mind. "Is she—" Sarah cut him off, her eyes flashing with something he couldn't read. "Let's go in. The movie's about to start," she said, turning to the ticket counter. "Good to see you, David." But her tone said otherwise. It was a rushed goodbye, a wall thrown up in haste. Emma glanced at him once more, and David felt a pang in his chest, like someone had squeezed his heart. He stood frozen, watching them vanish into the theater crowd. the bright poster of a kid's movie glowing above. The mall kept pulsing around him, but David felt out of place, like the world had shifted hues. He wandered to a nearby bench, sitting with his hands on his face. Emma's image wouldn't leave him. Those eyes, that smile. And Sarah. Why did she seem so scared? What wasn't she saying? He pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling as he opened his messaging app. Her name was still there, untouched for years, a relic of a time he'd tried to forget. There were old texts from before the breakup, full of emojis and promises, but nothing since. Nothing to explain a 6-year-old who looked so much like him. David took a deep breath, the mall's air feeling heavy, thick with possibilities he didn't know how to face. He needed answers, but something told him getting them would be like opening a door to a past he wasn't ready for. Still, he knew he couldn't ignore what he'd just seen. As the sun dipped outside, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, David made a choice. He would find the truth, no matter how much it hurt, no matter what he had to face. Because if Emma was his daughter, everything he thought he knew about himself and about Sarah was about to change. The mall still thrummed with the frenetic life of a Saturday night, but for David, the world seemed suspended in the moment Sarah vanished into the theater. Her glance, heavy with a question he couldn't decipher, lingered in his mind like a faded photograph, impossible to shake. He sat on the bench, his phone still in hand, Sarah's name glowing on the screen like an unkept promise. The mall's air, thick with the sweet scent of popcorn, and the constant murmur of the crowd felt stifling, as if each breath brought more questions than answers. Emma was his daughter. Sarah's revelation in the theater echoed in his chest, a dissonant note he couldn't silence. 7 years. 7 years of absence, of silence, of a truth he hadn't even suspected. Now what? How do you bridge a 7-year chasm? He stood, his legs heavy with the weight of every wrong choice he'd made, and walked to the mall's exit. The sky outside was a blanket of stars, the air cool with the scent of damp asphalt and magnolias, but none of it calmed the storm in his mind. The next morning, David arrived at his office before dawn. The glass and steel building, one of his designs, loomed over downtown Austin, but today it felt like a gleaming cage. He sat at his desk, his laptop open, skyscraper blueprints forgotten. He couldn't focus. Every line, every calculation dissolved into the image of Emma swinging her legs in the theater seat, of Sarah's guarded look, a mix of anger and pain he couldn't unravel. He opened his phone, its glow lighting his face in the dim office. Sarah's name was still there, untouched since the night before. He hesitated, his finger hovering over the message icon, but something made him switch to his email instead. An impulsive move, as if digging into the past could yield answers. He typed her name into the search bar, and what he found stopped his heart. There were emails. Not one, not two, but a dozen, scattered over months, 7 years ago. Subject lines like, "We need to talk. Please read. It's important." He clicked the first, his stomach churning like he'd swallowed stones. The message was short, written with an urgency he could feel even now. "David, I'm pregnant. I know we ended things, but you need to know. Call me, please." He opened another, then another, each more desperate than the last. Sarah begged him to respond, said she didn't want to fight, just needed him to know. The final email, dated months after their breakup, was different. Its tone was cold, resigned, like a winter wind. "You've made it clear you don't want to be part of this. I'm moving on. Don't contact me." David leaned back in his chair, the office air feeling thin, like he was atop a mountain. He didn't remember seeing these emails. 7 years ago, he'd been drowning in work, jetting between projects, trying to erase Sarah from his memory with long nights and whiskey bottles. But now the truth stared him down. He'd ignored her. Or worse, maybe he hadn't even noticed, lost in his own pain. Guilt hit him like thunder, weighing his shoulders down. He tried to recall those months, but they were a blur of meetings, deadlines, and nights crashing on the office couch. One memory stood out, sharp as a blade, a conversation with Mike, his best friend at the time. Mike, beer in hand, laughing as he said, "Sarah, forget her, man. Heard she's dating someone new, probably stirring up drama to trap you." David had believed him, or at least He'd used those words as an excuse not to look back. He opened his messaging app, scrolling to old texts from Mike. There it was, a chat from months after the breakup, Mike mentioning rumors about Sarah with someone new. "You're better off without her," it read. David's face burned, a mix of anger and shame. How could he have been so blind? How could he have trusted gossip over seeking the truth? He slammed his laptop shut, the sound echoing in the empty office. He couldn't change the past, but he could act now. He needed to find Sarah, hear her story, understand why she'd kept Emma's existence a secret for so long, and above all, he needed to know how to be part of the life of a daughter he didn't yet know. David grabbed his phone and searched for Sarah on Instagram. Her profile was private, but the display picture showed Emma smiling, clutching a colorful book. The caption read, "My sunshine." His heart clenched, a knot of tenderness and regret. He hit follow, knowing she might not accept, but he had to try. Then he checked LinkedIn, where her updated profile listed her as a freelance graphic designer, her latest post mentioning a workshop at Zilker Park, an illustration event from last week. Zilker Park. It was a start. He remembered how Sarah loved that place, the way she'd wander through the trails, her face lit by sunlight filtering through the oaks. Maybe she still went there. Maybe, if he went, he'd find her. It was a slim chance, but it was all he had. That afternoon, David drove to Zilker Park, the car slicing through Austin's streets under a grey sky promising rain. The air smelled of wet earth and cedar, a mix that reminded him of afternoons with Sarah years ago, walking hand in hand, dreaming of the future. He parked near the entrance, his heart pounding like a war drum. The park was quiet, with a few visitors strolling among the pecan trees, but Sarah wasn't there. He sat on a bench under an oak, the sound of birds blending with the distant hum of the city. As he watched families and couples around him, he thought of Emma. What was her life like? What did she love? Did she know who he was? The thought that his daughter had grown up without him was a knife twisting in his chest, but he wouldn't let guilt paralyze him. Not this time. He pulled out his phone, resolved to text Sarah. He wrote and deleted several times, the words never feeling right. Finally, he settled on something simple. "Sarah, I know I hurt you back then. I didn't know about Emma. I want to understand everything, to be part of her life. Please, give me a chance to talk." He hit send before he could second-guess himself, his heart racing like he'd run a marathon. The message sat there, marked as delivered, but no reply came. He waited, minutes dragging like hours, the sound of rain starting to fall, light as a whisper against the leaves. Just as he was about to give up and head back to his car, his phone buzzed, a notification. Sarah. His heart leapt, but the message was brief, almost cold. "Zilker Park. Cafe by the entrance tomorrow, 3 p.m. Don't be late." He read it over and over, relief mingling with a fresh wave of anxiety. She'd agreed to talk, but her tone suggested it wouldn't be easy. What would she say? And what would he do face to face with her, knowing Emma was his daughter? As the rain thickened, pattering against his car's hood, David felt a mix of hope and fear. Tomorrow he'd have answers. Or maybe just the start of a new fight. The rain fell in soft curtains over Zilker Park, the patter of drops on leaves like a murmur that tried but failed to calm David's racing heart. He parked near the park's entrance, the dashboard clock reading 2:45 p.m. 15 minutes early. The cafe by the entrance, with its wooden tables and the warm aroma of espresso mingling with the damp scent of earth, felt like an unlikely refuge for a conversation that could change his life. He clutched his phone. Sarah's message. "Zilker Park, cafe by the entrance, tomorrow 3 p.m. Don't be late." Still open, its words sharp as a blade, but laced with a thread of hope he dared not name. The grey sky reflected in puddles scattered across the ground, and David crossed into the cafe, his heart pounding like a drum caught in a rhythm he couldn't control. The place was nearly empty, save for a couple in the corner, laughing softly, and a barista wiping the counter with a lemon-scented cloth. He chose a table by the window, where he could see the pecan-lined paths outside, their leaves swaying in the rain like they were whispering secrets. Every sound, the clink of cups, the distant hum of a coffee machine, felt amplified, as if the world knew the weight of this moment. Sarah arrived at 3 p.m. sharp, her auburn hair tied in a loose bun, raindrops glinting like pearls on her navy coat. She was alone without Emma, and that brought David a mix of relief and disappointment. He wanted to see the girl again, but he knew this talk had to be just them. Sarah crossed the cafe with steady steps, but her eyes, when they met his, held a contained storm like clouds ready to break. "David," she said, sitting across from him, her voice firm but with a tremor that betrayed the fragility beneath. Her scent, floral with a hint of vanilla, hit him, pulling up memories of nights he'd tried to bury. "You came. I said I would," he replied, his voice softer than he intended, as if he feared breaking something delicate between them. "Sarah, I don't even know where to start, but I need to understand, why didn't you tell me about Emma?" She looked away, her gaze fixed on the window, where rain traced crooked lines on the glass. For a moment, the silence between them was louder than the rain, heavy as a velvet curtain. When she spoke, her voice was low but thick with a pain that seemed to have been held for years. "You think it was easy?" she asked, her eyes snapping back to him, now glistening with unshed tears. "I sent you emails, David. I called, I tried everything. But you were so busy building your towers, your new life, you didn't hear me. So I stopped trying." Her words hit like a cold wind, cutting through him. He remembered the emails he'd found, the pleas he'd ignored, swayed by rumors and his own anger. The guilt, already heavy since the night before, now felt like an anchor, dragging him down into a sea of regret. "I didn't see them," he admitted, his voice hoarse, each word painful. "I was lost, Sarah, hurt. I thought you'd moved on. Someone told me you were with someone else, and I believed them. I was an idiot." She laughed, a dry, humorless sound, like snapping twigs. "Someone, of course. There's always a someone to Juno to excuse it, right?" She shook her head, her fingers fidgeting with her purse strap. "I was pregnant, David. Alone. I had to deal with everything. Doctors, bills, fear, and you weren't there." His chest tightened like a rope was coiled around his heart. He wanted to defend himself, to say he didn't know, but the words felt too weak against her truth. Instead, he leaned forward, elbows on the table, his eyes locked on hers. "Tell me about her," he said, his voice nearly a whisper. "About Emma. What's she like? What does she love?" Sarah hesitated, as if weighing how much to share. Then her face softened, like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Emma's special," she said, a small smile forming. "She loves books, especially colorful ones. She draws, makes up stories. But she also—" Sarah paused, her eyes drifting to the window, as if drawing strength from the rain. "Emma has mild autism, diagnosed 2 years ago. It's not easy, David. She needs routines, special care. Sometimes she shuts down and I feel so helpless." The revelation crashed over him like a cold wave, stealing his breath. Autism. He knew little about it, but the word added a new layer to his guilt. His daughter facing challenges he couldn't imagine, and he hadn't been there. He looked at Sarah, seeing not just the woman he'd loved, but a mother who'd carried the world alone. "How did you do it?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Raise her alone with all that?" Sarah shrugged, a gesture that seemed casual but carried years of weight. "You do what you have to. You get up every day, take a deep breath, and keep going." "But I won't lie, David. There were days I thought I couldn't do it. Therapies, doctors, sleepless nights." She stopped, her eyes shining again. "But she's my light. It's all worth it for her." He felt a lump in his throat, a mix of admiration and shame. He wanted to reach for her hand, but the chasm between them felt too wide. Instead, he said, "And now? What does she know about me?" Sarah sighed, the sound soft as the rain outside. "Nothing. She's too young, David." I didn't know how to explain. I told her dad was far away, working, but she's curious. She's been asking questions lately. She looked at him, her eyes narrowing. "And now that you know, what are you going to do? Show up like nothing happened? Or disappear again?" The words cut like a knife, but he knew he deserved them. "I want to know her," he said, his voice steady despite the fear growing in his chest. "I want to be part of her life, Sarah. I don't know how, but I want to try." I won't disappear. She studied him, searching for truth in his eyes. The silence was thick, heavy with years of hurt and unspoken possibilities. Then she stood, grabbing her purse. I won't stop you, she said, her voice firm but with a trace of vulnerability. But this isn't about you, David. It's about Emma. She needs stability, not broken promises. Think hard before you step into her life. She started to walk away but paused, turning back to him. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. She's at the bookstore in the mall where we met. Emma loves spending afternoons there. If you really want to meet her, be there. But, as Mom's friend, not her dad. Not yet. With that, she left, her words and scent lingering in the air. David sat at the table, his untouched coffee growing cold. The rain outside thickened, drumming against the glass like racing thoughts. He was one step from meeting his daughter, but each step felt like a minefield, full of risks he didn't know how to navigate. How do you approach a child who doesn't know you? And what was Sarah still holding back, locked behind a wall he couldn't breach? As he walked back to his car, rain soaking his shoulders, David felt a new determination, like a spark catching fire. He couldn't erase the past, but he could build something new. Tomorrow at the bookstore he'd see Emma again, and maybe, just maybe, he'd start to learn how to be the father she deserved. But as he climbed into his car, a doubt struck like lightning. What if Sarah decided at the last moment that he wasn't worthy of Emma's life? The rain from the night before had left Austin with a glossy sheen, the streets reflecting the glow of skyscrapers like a fractured mirror. David drove toward the mall, his heart beating in time with the low rumble of his engine. It was nearly 2 p.m., and the bookstore where Sarah had set the meeting loomed in his mind, like a stage where everything could change or collapse. The fear lingered. What if Sarah changed her mind at the last second, deciding he didn't deserve to be in Emma's life? The thought was a thorn in his chest, but he pushed it down, focusing on the promise he'd made to himself. Today, he'd meet his daughter. The mall was lively, but less chaotic than the previous Saturday. The air carried the scent of fresh coffee and the sticky sweetness of waffles from a nearby kiosk. David crossed the food court, the clatter of laughter and silverware blending with the buzz of his thoughts. The bookstore was on the second floor, a haven of colorful shelves and quiet comfort, smelling of new paper and ink, stirring memories of childhood afternoons. He arrived 10 minutes early, his hands sweaty, his stomach knotted like he'd swallowed a handful of rocks. Sarah was already there, sitting in a corner of the children's section with Emma. The girl was hunched over a picture book, her dark curls falling over her face as she pointed at a page, saying something David couldn't hear. Sarah smiled at her, a smile so soft it seemed to melt the air. But when her eyes met David's, her expression hardened, like a curtain dropping. She stood, whispering to Emma, who looked up, curious, her hazel eyes gleaming like his under the bookstore's gentle light. "You came," Sarah said, her voice neutral but edged with caution, like she was stepping through a minefield. "Remember what we agreed? You're just Mom's friend for now." David nodded, his heart squeezed tight. "I know. I won't push." Sarah studied him, as if searching for cracks in his promise, then gestured for him to approach. Emma tilted her head, her eyes big and questioning, like a young owl's. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice clear but hesitant, testing the waters. "Hi, Emma," David said, crouching to her level. He tried to smile, but his face felt stiff, his muscles tense. "I'm David, a friend of your mom's." Emma wrinkled her nose, sizing him up, then returned to her book, pointing at a picture of a green dragon with shimmering wings. "Do you like dragons?" she asked, not looking up. David glanced at Sarah, who gave a slight nod, like a green light. He sat on the floor beside Emma, the soft carpet under his hands, Sarah's floral scent lingering like a memory. "Love dragons," he said, his voice lighter now, as if Emma's presence eased the tension. "That one looks cool. Got a name?" "Spike," Emma said with a giggle that rang like bells. "I made it up. He breathes blue fire and flies faster than a jet." David grinned, a real one this time, warmth spreading through his chest like hot cocoa on a cold day. "Blue fire? That's rare. Does Spike have any special adventures?" Emma lit up, her eyes sparkling as she spun a tale of Spike saving a forest from a shadow villain. David listened, captivated, not just by her imagination but by the way her hands danced, painting the story in the air. Sarah watched silently, her eyes softening with each of Emma's giggles, but still carrying a caution David could feel like a weight. When Emma finished, David clapped, hamming it up to earn another smile. "You're an amazing storyteller," he said. "Ever thought about writing a book about Spike?" She blushed, hiding behind her book, but he caught the corner of her mouth, twitching up. Sarah stepped in, her voice gentle but firm. "Emma, how about picking another book to take home?" She shot David a look, a silent warning not to push too far. Emma hopped up, darting to a shelf of colorful books, and David stood, his heart pounding like he'd run a race. "She's incredible," he said to Sarah, his voice low, brimming with emotion he couldn't hold back. "How do you do it? Raise her alone, with so much care?" Sarah crossed her arms, her gaze on Emma, who was flipping through a shiny covered book. "It's not easy," she said, her voice heavy with a bone-deep weariness. "Her autism. It's one day at a time. She loves routines, but changes scare her. Therapies help, but they're expensive, and She stopped, as if she'd said too much. "I do what I can." David's chest ached, a mix of awe and guilt. He wanted to ask more, to understand her struggles, but the moment felt fragile, like a soap bubble about to burst. Instead, he said, "If there's anything I can do, for therapies, anything, tell me. I want to help." Sarah's eyes narrowed, weighing his sincerity. "It's not just money, David. It's time, patience, presence. You can't just show up and think you'll fix everything." Her words stung like a cold breeze, but he nodded, knowing she was right. "I know. I want to learn. I want to be here, for real." She didn't reply, but her expression softened like a crack in her armor. Emma ran back, clutching a dinosaur book. "Mom, this one," she said, her voice bright, then looked at David. "Do you like dinosaurs?" "Totally," he said, smiling. "What's your favorite?" "Velociraptor," Emma beamed. "He's fast and smart like Spike, but with claws." David laughed, and for a moment the world felt lighter, like Emma's giggle could chase away shadows. Sarah suggested they spend the afternoon at Zilker Park, since Emma loved it, and David agreed instantly, his heart racing at the chance for more time with them. At the park, the sun broke through the clouds, painting the leaves a vibrant green. Emma ran ahead, pointing at butterflies and flowers, while David and Sarah walked side by side, a careful silence between them. He watched Emma pause to touch a flower's petals, her fingers gentle, her eyes focused. Sarah explained quietly that Emma sometimes got lost in details, part of who she was. David listened, soaking in every word, feeling the weight and beauty of knowing his daughter. As the sun set, splashing the sky with orange and pink, Emma ran to them, holding a heart-shaped leaf. "Look, David, a star leaf," she said, showing it off. "It's beautiful," he said, crouching to see it closely. "You're great at finding treasures, huh?" Emma grinned, and for the first time, David felt a fragile but real connection, like a bridge starting to form. Sarah watched, her eyes gleaming with something he couldn't name, hope, maybe, or fear. When they parted, Emma waving with her dinosaur book, Sarah said softly, "It's a good start, but it's just a start, David." He nodded, his heart swelling with joy and anxiety. Driving home, Emma's star leaf glowed in his mind, but a new doubt nagged. How could he be the father she needed when he didn't know where to begin? And what was Sarah still hiding behind that wall of silence he couldn't touch? The night draped Austin in a velvet veil, the city's lights twinkling like stars caught in a web of steel. David drove home, Emma's laughter echoing in his mind, light as bells but heavy with the weight of a responsibility he was just starting to grasp. The star leaf she'd given him shone in his memory, a small treasure marking the first thread of their bond. But Sarah's words, "It's a good start, but it's just a start, David," hung like fog, stirring a question he couldn't shake. What was she still hiding? And how could he prove he deserved to be the father Emma needed? In his apartment, the silence was sharp, broken only by the hum of the AC and the ticking of a wall clock. David sank onto the couch, his phone in hand. Emma's picture on Sarah's Instagram still open. His daughter. The word felt alien, like a puzzle piece that didn't fit. He thought of the life he'd built. Skyscrapers, endless meetings, lonely nights. It all seemed hollow now, like a house without warmth. He needed to change, not just for Emma, but for himself. The next morning, David woke with a fire-like resolve. He spent hours researching autism, devouring articles and videos, jotting down terms like sensory routines and visual stimuli. Each word was a stone in the path he had to cross, but also a bridge to understanding Emma. He wanted to be ready, not just to impress Sarah, but to be useful, present. By noon, he sent Sarah a careful but firm text. "I want to see her again. Tell me when and where. I'm learning, Sarah. I want to do this right." The reply took ages, each minute stretching like a taut string. When his phone buzzed, he nearly dropped his coffee mug. The message was short, less cold. Saturday, 10 a.m., Barton Creek Greenbelt. Emma likes to draw there. Bring a sketchbook, she'll love it. The week was a dance of nerves and preparation. David bought a dragon-covered sketchbook, thinking of Emma's Spike, and a set of colored pencils that gleamed like gems. He reflected on his life, the choices that led him to miss Sarah's emails 7 years ago. Guilt was a shadow, but now a reminder, not a cage. He wanted to be more than an architect of buildings. He wanted to build something lasting. On Saturday, Barton Creek Greenbelt was alive with birdsong and the fresh scent of mown grass, mixed with the sweet stickiness of cotton candy from a vendor. David arrived early, the sketchbook under his arm, his heart pounding like a war drum. He found Sarah and Emma by a creek, the girl on a colorful blanket, drawing with focus that made the world fade. Sarah was reading, but her eyes lifted when David approached, a mix of caution and curiosity. "You brought something?" Sarah asked, nodding at the sketchbook. David smiled, showing the dragon cover. Thought Spike deserved a special spot. Emma's eyes sparkled like stars at the sight. "Is it for me?" she asked, her voice bright, like the gift was magic. "Of course," David said, sitting beside her. "I thought you could draw more of Spike's adventures, maybe a flying dinosaur." She laughed, tracing the dragons on the cover like they were real. David's chest warmed, like sunlight breaking through clouds. He glanced at Sarah, who smiled faintly, her eyes still guarded. The morning passed like a dream, Emma sketching dragons and dinosaurs, spinning tales of fantasy and reality. David joined in, suggesting colors and details, learning her language of quick gestures and deep silences. Sarah sometimes chimed in, pointing at a drawing or cracking a joke, and for moments it felt like the past didn't exist, like they were a family. But David knew it was a fragile illusion. When Emma ran off to chase a butterfly, David turned to Sarah. "She's so alive," he said, his voice thick with awe. "You've done an incredible job with her." Sarah watched Emma, her eyes softening. "She keeps me going," she said quietly, like sharing a secret. "But it's exhausting, David. Therapies, appointments, nights she won't sleep because her routine's off. Sometimes I wonder if I'm enough." His chest ached, a mix of respect and helplessness. "Let me help," he said, almost pleading. "Not just money, time, learning, being there for appointments, the little things." Sarah's eyes narrowed, testing his sincerity. "You say that now," she said, her voice firm but trembling. "But what about when it's not new anymore? When it's hard? You vanished before, David." Her words cut deep, but he didn't flinch. "I know I messed up, but I'm not that guy anymore. Let me prove it." She didn't answer, but the silence felt lighter, like a door ajar. Emma ran back, holding a yellow flower. "For you," she said to David, her smile bright enough to light the park. He took it, his heart racing, and looked at Sarah, who smiled, a real smile for the first time. "She likes you," she said softly. "But go slow, David. She needs consistency." Their meetings became regular. Parks, bookstores, Zilka. David stayed Mom's friend, but each moment with Emma built something new. He learned her cues, when she got too quiet, lost in a detail or needed space. Sarah slowly opened up, sharing stories of Emma's early years, her challenges, her triumphs. David soaked it in, each word a map to his daughter's heart. But the past cast shadows. One night, eating alone, David got a call from Mike, his old friend. Mike's voice was casual, like no time had passed. "Heard you're chasing Sarah again," he laughed. "Careful, man. She's always been trouble." David's blood boiled, remembering the rumors that pushed him away from Sarah. "You were wrong about her," he snapped, "and I was a fool for listening. Don't call me again." He hung up, his heart pounding but clear. He didn't need Mike or the echoes of a past that trapped him. He needed Emma and maybe Sarah if she'd let him. Months later, on a sunny Sunday at Zilker Park, David helped Emma build a stick castle. She laughed, her curls bouncing, and Sarah, for the first time, seemed at ease, her eyes glowing with something like the love they'd once shared. When Emma ran for more sticks, Sarah turned to David, her voice hesitant. "There's something I didn't tell you," she said softly, like she feared breaking the moment. "When Emma was diagnosed, I almost gave up. I was scared I wasn't enough, but I found a letter you wrote years ago before we split. You talked about building something lasting, bigger than us. I kept it, David. It gave me strength." David froze, his heart racing. He vaguely remembered that letter, written on a night of dreams and wine when he thought they'd build a life together. "You kept it?" he asked, his voice shaking. She nodded, pulling a worn envelope from her pocket, its edges frayed by time. "I read it when I thought I couldn't go on. And now—" She paused, her eyes shining with tears. "I think you're trying to build that again. With Emma. And maybe with us." The world stopped. David looked at her, seeing the woman he'd loved, the mother who'd protected Emma alone, and now someone who might be opening the door again. He took her hand, hesitant, and when she didn't pull away, he felt hope like the first ray of sun after a storm. "I want that," he said, his voice steady. "You and Emma. I won't give up." Sarah smiled, a mix of fear and possibility, and squeezed his hand. Emma ran back, holding a star-shaped stick. "Look, Mom, David, it's for the castle." They laughed, and for the first time, David felt they were building something together, not a skyscraper, but a family. The road wouldn't be easy, but watching Emma place the stick on the castle with Sarah beside him, he knew it was worth it. Hello. Hope you enjoyed the story. Please share your rating 0 to 10 and let me know what you think in the comments. Check out the next story on the screen for more heartfelt tales. Until next time.